Hello folks, and welcome to another fun-packed episode presented by the GomeCat and yours truly. So, before we get into the detail of today's episode, as usual, just the health warning. It will be extremely boring. It will not be of any entertaining value. So if you're here for entertainment, up there, search box, funny cat video. It's your friend. Also, this video will be available free of any and all advertising on Vimeo should you find yourself on old YouTube. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to talk about the topic of CAN logging. I'm going to tell you what CAN logging is, hopefully tell you what it is not, because there's quite a bit of misinformation out there. And also we will show you the basics of how to do it for yourself. Yes, that's right. Okay, GomeCat just reminded me. So, reason for making this particular video is that, as some of you will know, for the past while I've been working on the BMW i3 Lim for the purposes of getting CCS fast charging available to the masses. And the way that has primarily been done, the enabling piece of the puzzle, has been through the use of CAN logs. Now, I have been appealing to people on various platforms to perform some CAN bus logging for me. And it became apparent that I guess not a lot of people really understood what it was that I was asking them to do. So hopefully this video, excuse me, will help to fill in the blanks. So, I'm not going to get into what a CAN bus is. If you don't know what that is, I'd suggest a quick internet search. There's a lot of information out there. But I guess a one sentence would be that it is a means for the control units in a modern vehicle, so all the little computers, to exchange data. Because they need to do that. For example, the engine control computer would need to be able to speak to the gearbox controller, would be able to need to speak to the ABS, traction control system, and so forth. And they do that by means of exchanging data via CAN. So it's a little bit like computer networks where we plug Ethernet cables into our computers so that they can exchange data with other computers either locally or on the internet. And CAN bus is a way for all the little control boxes in your vehicle to exchange data. So what is a CAN bus log? Well, a simple analogy for a CAN bus log is a bit like the old days of tapping a landline phone. So let's say that we had 4 people on a conference call. So we would come along, connect to the phone line without any of the 4 people knowing that we were there, and record their conversation. We would then have a log or a recording of the information that those 4 people exchanged during the course of that conversation. That would then allow us to analyze how the words in this case, but in the case of CAN, how the data flowed between those 4 people that we analogize to 4 control units in a car. And it lets us then speak the same, not only the same language, but speak the same words in the same way as they were spoken during the original conversation, so that we can take a module away from its parent vehicle, put it in a different vehicle or in a different application, and basically fool it into thinking that it is still in its parent vehicle and get it to work and perform its originally intended tasks for us. So in the case of the Lim, I have another one of these in my E46 Touring that is fairly convinced at the minute that it's still in a nice shiny 2017 i3. But like all things, nothing is ever as easy as it sounds, and it's learning a language and learning a dialect. We make a lot of mistakes, and our little control units can be very strict about any of those mistakes, and they can say, no, I don't like what you've just said to me, or the speed at which you've just said it, or the order in which you have spoken the words, and I'm going to go away now and cry. So the logs are the first step, interpreting the logs is the second step, and then forming our own communications that we can use with the control units are the final step. So the more logs that we have, the richer the data set is, and the easier it is to learn the language and see the nuances and understand better how to talk the language that our control boxes are expecting. So that's what CAN logging is and why we need to do it. It is the lifeblood of modern vehicle reverse engineering and repurposing of modules from basically crashed or end of life cars. Finally, the GOMCAT is going to explain to us what CAN logging is not, and that's a very important area. Over to you, GOMCAT. The camera's on. Seriously? Okay, I guess I'll be explaining to you today, folks, what CAN logging is not. So, quite simply, CAN logging is not a way for me to steal your personal info. Or indeed, it's not a way for anyone to steal your personal info. Yes, there is vehicle-specific information typically contained within CAN logs. And depending on which CAN bus that we're communicating with, there may be more or less of that vehicle-specific information. To take the example of the Lim, it is connected to the powertrain CAN. So examples of messages that would be exchanged over powertrain CAN would be your battery voltage, your state of charge, the current draw, what the charger is doing, what the motor and inverter are doing, the vehicle speed, things like that. In terms of vehicle specific personal information about the worst of it that we see on these logs from the i3 is the VIN and the mileage from the parent vehicle. Now, if we got into other areas of the car, could we get access to phone records and things like that? I guess so, but not on powertrain CAN. And powertrain CAN is the stuff that we're interested in. So I have a few CAN logs from a BMW i3 here, and if I were some hacker type person that wanted to follow up one of these people or hunt them down or get into their bank accounts or stalk them or do any of that stuff that we hear about, I would be absolutely wasting my time with those powertrain CAN logs, folks. So I just wanted to get that point across so that people understand it, that it's not any kind of a security risk or that the kind of people like myself that are involved in this have some kind of nefarious intent. So now that we've that out of the way, hopefully you'll now understand what a CAN log is, why we do it, and what it's not. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm not going to bother asking the GomeCat to do this part. I'm going to show you physically how we would connect to a CAN bus. And I'll show you some of the hardware that you can buy and some of the excellent free software that you can download for yourself and experiment with. That not only lets us see the raw CAN data, but more importantly gives us the tools to reverse engineer it and to interpret it in a much more human readable way. So let's get to that, and hopefully I can get him to do something then, because this was supposed to be a joint production today, but look at this. Okay, so let's get straight to it. What is a CAN bus? Well, it's pretty damn complicated. Here we have a bare circuit board that, in this case, we'll say that this is some module in your car that is doing something. It could be controlling headlights, could be just, I guess, anything, windows, anything physically in your car that needs to be controlled. It's connected to a CAN bus, and the CAN bus is basically two wires. That's it. In this case, the red wire is CAN high and the black wire is called CAN low. And this is a differential bus, so you don't actually need a ground or anything else. You just need these two wires, and through the signals that are transmitted on these, we can get a lot of information sharing going on. So let's say that we had this bus going to this control unit, and we were interested in reverse engineering this control unit here, and we want to know what CAN information that it transmits, and most importantly what it expects to see coming back into it in order for it to believe that it's still in its parent vehicle and will perform the function that we want it to. So all throughout the car we're going to have these CAN bus wires. So they will be typically in the loom and they will loop from unit to unit. So you will have multiple what are called nodes on the CAN bus. So this board could be buried somewhere completely inaccessible in our car. We don't need to go tearing the car apart. All we need to do is to find a convenient location where we can access the same CAN bus, so the two wires that are connected to our module that we're interested in. So next thing we need to do is to put something in here that can listen to the CAN bus. Now there are multiple pieces of hardware available for performing this task. Some of them super cheap, some of them super expensive, and a lot of them in the middle. I'm not going to attempt to cover all of them, or to try to say, well, you know, this one's better than that one. The ones that I use are typically things that I have myself that I've pieced together. But there is one important thing that we have to specify here, is that automotive CAN buses, particularly powertrain CAN buses, run with a lot of data on them. Example, the BMW i3 powertrain CAN runs at about 2,500 frames per second. So if you can imagine, that's like 2,500 words per second on this particular phone line. The Tesla Model 3 powertrain CAN pushes that up to depending on what the car is doing, between 3.5 and 4,000 frames per second. So a lot of the low-cost CAN bus loggers and things like that that you see will at best lose some of the conversation, and most of the time won't even be able to listen to it. They'll just sit there looking at you. So the ones that I recommend, that I've used, are based on the Arduino Dewey Atmel SAM 3X80 microcontroller. And I'll bring you onto the computer in a few minutes, and I will show you where you can purchase a specific piece of hardware for doing just that. So these little ones that I have on the bench today are kind of my hacky versions of a much neater piece of hardware that I will be showing to you. But the principle remains the same. We'll have a module, we'll have a USB cable that we'll connect to it, so just normal USB that we'd have on most computers. We'll have two wires coming out of this board. Strangely enough, there'll be CAN high and CAN low. And we will find a convenient place on our CAN bus that is connected to the module that we're interested in, and we will basically tap into it. We will connect our module into the CAN bus. So now we've effectively tapped the phone line, and we can listen to the conversations on there. We will not participate in them. We will not put any of our information in here. We will just listen. And that is what a logging system does. Now, obviously in this case here, it's just a few wires that I have on the bench that are forming the CAN bus. And thus there's no problem cutting them and sticking our own connectors in here. Now, quite understandably, some folks, particularly if they've gone out and bought a new car, don't like the idea of some weirdo on the internet and his very lazy cat connecting into their powertrain CAN bus, or having to strip the wire or to connect to it. That's perfectly understandable. Hell, I wouldn't let some I mean, you have to cut that part out. Yeah, okay, right. So there's a few alternatives to doing that. The first is that most of these buses will connect to places in the car where there will be multi-pin connectors. So Elon, will you let me? Elon, thank you. So you'll typically have a connector like this one. This is from a Tesla Model 3. And you see here that there is a yellow and a blue wire that's actually a CAN bus. So if this was in your vehicle, plugged in somewhere, then one way that we can gain access to the CAN bus without having to, cut into the wiring is by a procedure known as back probing. And if I can see how much preparation I put into my videos, the Gumcat was supposed to get the back probes out, but of course he didn't do that either. So what we have is typically a probe like this that's very fine and has a point. We simply insert it through the back seal until it makes contact with the pin in the connector. Perform the log and remove the probe, and there's no damage anywhere. So that's one way that we can circumvent having to cut into the wiring. There is an even more better way, and thanks to a donation by a member of the Open Inverter Forum, I have just such a device here that I can show to you. Now this little guy is an Inventure CL CAN version 2.2, and what this is it's an inductive CAN pickup. So how does this work? Well, it's got 4 wires. We give it 12 volts and ground, and it has CAN. It's our yellow and blue wires here. Now on the back, it's got 2 screws here. So if we... Guncat, could you not have gotten the screwdriver out for me? Oh my God. Going to be one of my worst productions ever, this now. I'm going to make an absolute idiot out of myself because I never do that on camera. Really, seriously, you couldn't even have got a Phillips screwdriver for me. God. Yeah, this co-hosting thing is really not going to work out, is it? Seriously? We got all flathead screwdrivers. If I didn't want a flathead screwdriver... Okay, we won't get angry, you know, they say that these partnerships never work, but okay, you know, I was wrong. Had to be me, had to be made the fool of again. Give me a second, folks, I'm going to get a Phillips screwdriver here. Alright, so we'll just edit out that part there where I look like a complete idiot trying to open Phillips screws with a flathead screwdriver. So, as I was saying, with the correct screwdriver, look at that. I'll use the screening can from the limb for something practical. We simply take these 2 screws out of the back of it. Pop the back cover off. And inside here, so there's 2 little white lines. One of them says can high, one of them says can low. So, if we were to take our CAN bus wires and place the CAN low wire, just without cutting it, without doing anything, in there like that, and the CAN high wire just in on top of it. There's a little thing on the back here to keep them separated. So I think the actual correct way to do this is basically to stick them, yeah, there it is basically to stick them around, yeah, there's these little padded things. I haven't used this before, so of course I'm making an idiot out of myself. I should ask the Guncat to maybe to demonstrate this. He's much more ambidextrous than me. So we take our wires, wrap them through the back cover, just screw the back cover back on, perform the CAN log, do what we need to do. We can take the screws out, release the wires, and that's it. We're basically done. That's our CAN log performed. So there are many ways to do this in ways that do not risk, you know, anything being discovered, any vehicle warranties being invalidated or anything of that nature. So that's how we connect to a CAN bus. Finally, I'm going to go ahead now on the computer here and I will show you how we, you know, where to get a proper piece of hardware to perform this function and the relevant computer software that you would also need. Okay, folks, so this is we're on the computer here, and what we're looking at is the EVTV DUI microcontroller board, and this is what I would strongly recommend that you use for CAN bus logging. So I'll put a link in the description to this web address here where you can go to purchase it. It has a purchase price of just under $100 US, and you can come in here and you can read the instructions for it and a lot more of the data. But just want to focus on one thing here. It'll be very simple. So we have a USB port, and so we connect to our computer. We have 4 screw terminals on this connection block. We have a ground and a power in case we want to run it in a car from a 12-volt supply. But in the case of CAN logging, we will simply be powering it from the USB port. And then the bottom is CAN high and CAN low, so our 2-wire CAN bus, and that's it. That is our connection. Finally, we need some software to run on our computer to connect to this. And that software is called SavvyCAN. And it's, again, I'll put a link to this address in the description. And it is available here. It is completely free and open source. And is basically, without a doubt, the best piece of software that you can get for CAN reverse engineering. There is a good bit of discussion going on over on GitHub here, and I believe there is here a link to an older video that Colin Kidder, who is the gentleman that designed and maintains this, did. So here it is. Here there's a very basic video on how to use it. And you can grab this for Mac, Linux and Windows, both here and over on GitHub. So I'd recommend that you go to the GitHub to get the latest version. So I won't get into any detail on this at the minute. I'd encourage people, even have a passing interest, grab this and you can download some of the CAN logs from my GitHub as well and have a look at them, and get yourself a little bit more familiar with them, so that you just get to see what's going on under the bonnet of your car in a little bit more detail. So that's about it. There's the hardware that you need and the accompanying software. Now I understand there are other hardware software combos, some of them very expensive, some of them very cheap. I'm not going to get into what's better or best or anything. I can simply tell you from my own experiences that this and this are the way to go for the modern high-speed CAN bus networks. Alrighty folks, so I hope that that's helped to clear up a little bit about why we need CAN logs, what we do with them, what we don't do with them, and the basics of how we obtain them. Yeah, that was a bird. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll just make a final appeal here that if you do have BMW i3 and you will be willing to either do yourself what I've demonstrated or to let me do it for you, then do please leave a comment and get in touch, because the more data that we get on the limb, then the better that we're going to be able to make all of this stuff work. So I'll leave it there. As usual, don't forget to dislike, do not share, and for Pete's sake, unsubscribe from this stupid channel. I will put links in the description to the EVTV DUI board and the SavvyCAN software, as well as the usual suspects in there for the Open Inverter Forum, GitHub, PayPal and Patreon in case you want to buy food for him. No, I don't want to do that either. So, until next time, from the Gom Cat and from me, happy CAN bus logging.